Hi, it's me, Jazzy. I'm back with another tech-related video. Today, I'm taking a look at a digital microscope. This one's the Andonstar AD246S. This could be a great option if you're just looking to get into digital microscopes. Now, this one's very kindly been sent over by Andonstar, so big thanks to Andonstar for sending me this sample for review. So it has a 7-inch LCD screen. It comes with 3 interchangeable lenses, can record video footage up to 2160p and capture images at 24 megapixels. Right, let's get this microscope over on the bench and see what do we get in the box. Right, let's see what we get in the box. Right, nicely packed. Foam on top there. Oh, lots of information with this. We have a book, digital microscope. Great, this particular one is the AD246S. Take a look at that in a minute. And we've got some really nicely done assembly instructions here. That's nice and large. This looks nice and simple, this. So we've got a monitor, a base, a beam, a column, and some screws and clips. Couldn't be easier, could it? And I think you get a little viewing box for the pre-prepared microscope slides if you want to take a look at that sort of thing. So in the box, we've got the screen here. Here we go. And this is a 7-inch LCD screen. Here we go. Nice array of buttons there and a little infrared. This has got a remote control with it. Okay, and the microscope is on the back. Let's see what else we've got. A cable here. With the control for the lights, I presume. So USB-C to A and barrel jack. Oh yeah, we've got some pre-prepared microscope slides there, and we've got various little screws and clips and things that are going to be useful. A UK power adapter, fantastic. What is this? This is a 5V 2A, pretty standard, with a USB-A socket. Another cable here, I would presume that's to connect to PC. USB-C to A. We've got a little dish here for putting little things in that you want to observe. And a remote control with proper buttons. Nice. Love a remote control. Here's the light box for looking at the pre-prepared microscope slides. In here are lenses. Look at this. Wow, we've got some lenses here. Fantastic. So it comes with 3 lenses. I think one's pre-installed already. And these are for different distances. So we'll pick the one that best suits looking at PCBs. Have a look at those in a minute. It's nice that they come in a little box to keep them in though. Like things like that. So I think we're down to just the stand now. Oh, nearly missed another little bag of goodies here. Got some little fixings in there. Great. Oh, and another cable. Oh, HDMI cable, is it? Looks like HDMI to mini HDMI. And here we go. This is the bracket that holds the microscope. I will say it's very smooth. Okay, so that's that. And in the bottom, we've got the base. And we've got the upright to fix the microscope to. Let's get the box out of the way. Okay, here is our base. Now this looks really nice and simple. So we've got some gooseneck lights on here. Now let's see, what are the goosenecks like on this? Actually, all right. They pretty much stay where you put them. Because you do find sometimes with these that they just don't stay put. So yeah, these look pretty good. So you just screw this in. This is nice and easy. Okay, and then this just slots on here to hold the microscope. Of course, you can adjust this for height up and down. And then you've got your height adjustment here as well, up and down. And the other good thing with this one is you can move it out if you want the microscope further out from the stand. You can move it further back in and then just tighten this one up. This one does your height and your rotation. So you can rotate that and then just do that up when you're ready. You can angle this ever so slightly as well. So if you need that a little bit more, and that's pretty strong and sturdy looking and really easy to assemble. Like that literally just took a few minutes. Nice and simple. Big metal base plate there with rubber feet underneath. So you've got feet there, so it's not going to move about too much on your bench. You've got a little barrel jack connection on the back there, which powers the gooseneck lights. Okay, so now it's time to put the microscope on, but before we can do that, we need to unscrew the lens. There's already one lens pre-installed. We need to unscrew that so we can get the microscope through here, and we'll need to slacken these two off as well. Right, okay, so let's take the lens out. We'll try out all the lenses and we'll see which one is going to be best for looking at PCBs. It does give you the object distance on the bottom of each lens. So you've got 3 different ones. So you just undo the 2 little screws and that just pulls out. Okay, so just tighten these 2 up a little bit. The one that was on there is lens A, object distance 12mm to 320mm. This is object distance 4mm to 5mm. And this is 90 to 300mm. Okay, well let's start with the one that was already in there. This is the first microscope I've looked at that has interchangeable lenses. Interested to see if this is an advantage or not, being able to change the lens. I guess once you've found the one that's best for you, you're probably going to stick with it, I would have thought. But it's nice that they give you the option though, because if you've got different use cases, like if you want to use it for electronics, but you also collect coins, you might want to change the lens for looking at different things. That's the light box and the pre-prepared slides. If you want to look at some biological samples, you can do that. You get some little tweezers in there as well for looking at little bits and bobs, and a little dish for putting your samples in. Things that you found that you want to look at under your microscope. Right, so here's our remote. So let's get that out. Does it come with batteries? No, we need batteries. It needs 2 AAA batteries. Okay, I'll find some of those in a minute. Okay, so what have we got in terms of I/O on here? So we've got a mini HDMI, a USB-C, and we've got a micro SD card slot. So you've got 2 different sets of cables with this. So this is the one you'll generally be using. You've got the USB-C there to power the microscope. You've got a barrel jack to power the gooseneck lights and a USB-A which goes into the power brick. Now, if you're running it in PC mode, you've got an alternative cable there, which is just a USB-C to USB-A that you connect to your PC, in which case the microscope will be running off your PC. And you've got a controller there for your gooseneck lights, power on and off, and your brightness for your gooseneck lights. All very nice. So having a quick look at the spec, it does recommend lens L for doing soldering and repairs, and the one that's on there is more for looking at coins and things, and lens D, which is this one here, is for looking at the biological slides. So horses for courses, depending on what you're looking at. We'll try all 3 lenses anyway, because I'm intrigued to know the difference. And it wouldn't be a thorough test if we didn't test it thoroughly. So let's hook up the USB-A to the power brick, and we put the USB-C to the microscope. There we go. Barrel jack there for the gooseneck lights, and then HDMI, mini HDMI in this case. There we go. Right, I reckon it's time we take the peel off then. Nice. Welcome. Right, okay, the lights are on and working. They look good. We can change the brightness with our controller here. So I think that's on full brightness, but you can take that down. Now the lens we've got on there might not necessarily be the best lens for looking at electronics, but let's pop a board under. Will it focus? It does. Oh, that's nice and sharp. Look at that. I'm pretty impressed with this. It's a 7-inch LCD screen. You can capture images at 24 megapixels. It'll record video at 2160p Ultra HD. We need to pop an SD card in. Now, it doesn't come with the microscope, but it will take any standard micro SD card. There we go. So when you first put your SD card in, depending on what format it's in, you may need to format your SD card. So you just go into menu and settings and format, press OK. All data will be deleted. OK. Right, so that's now ready to go. So let's come out of the menu. So now we can capture images by pressing the camera button here. You can see that's captured now nicely. And pressing the OK will start the video record. You can see there we've started recording. So let's just move this around a bit so we've got something to have a look at. You can see this board's been well harvested for bits, but that's a nice video image. And of course, you could play that back on your PC by putting the SD card into your PC, or by hooking the microscope up and putting it into PC mode, which we'll take a look at in a moment. So this is where you see the forward and backward adjustment on the stand is handy, because we're looking at a bigger board. You can bring that out, or if we're going to look at a smaller board, there we go, we just push that back in. One out, and we can look at something smaller, and you're still nicely in the middle of the base there. And you can take an image using the remote control as well. Just press the button on the top there and that takes your image. Of course, on your remote you can also zoom in. You've got your 3x digital zoom there, so you can zoom right in and see the detail. There you go, it tells you it's ×3 zoom, and you can zoom out. If you keep your finger on the button, it'll do it. So you've got a plus there, that turns your crosshair on and off if you want a crosshair on the screen or not. And you can adjust your sharpness there and your contrast. You've got a reverse mode there, and you've got a black and white mode there. You've got a button there that says default settings. So if you've really messed it up and you've no idea where you are, just press default settings, it'll take it back. You've also got the handy reverse feature there as well. So if you're looking at something upside down, you can flip your image over and look at it the right way up. So let's take a closer look at the menu. So you can change the resolution, exposure, you can add a date stamp, you can change the sharpness, which you can also do from the remote. You can do a freeze frame. It's off at the moment, but you can turn that on, and then you can do the freeze frame from the remote control if you turn that on. You can adjust your contrast and your color. Pressing menu again takes you into the settings menu. You can change the settings for your grid lines, the date and time, the language, the frequency, format your SD card like we did earlier, or revert the scope back to default settings. Right, so let's take a look at the different lenses and what the differences are between them. So what we'll do is we'll try lens A and lens L, and we'll set the microscope at the highest position on the stand and see what sort of focal distance we get, and then we'll bring the microscope down to like 80-90 mil. Then we can see visually what the difference is going to be between the two lenses and which one's going to be the best for looking at our boards. We already know that lens D has a really short focal distance, and that is ideal for use with the light box for looking at the pre-prepared slides. So let's take a look at that as well, shall we? So let's set up the microscope at its highest level, and we'll try it with lens A first. So this is lens A at the microscope's furthest distance from the base. And this is lens A at a distance of 80 mil from the lens to the base of the microscope. So you can see the difference straight away. This is lens L at the highest point of the microscope. So that's with the microscope at the furthest point that it will go from the base. And this is with the microscope at 90 centimeters away from the base, which is the nearest distance this lens will focus. So lens D is really only good for looking at the prepared microscope slides, as it has an object distance of 4 mil to 5 mil. But you can see it's perfect if you're looking at little specimens on the light box. You just plug the barrel jack into the light box instead of the gooseneck lights. There we go, and you get a really clear view of the microscope slides. Of course, you can still zoom in. You've got the 3x digital zoom on there. Pretty cool. If you want to look at some microscope slides. Okay, so what we're looking at here is this tiny group of surface mount components on this tablet PCB. And here they are. This is with lens L. You can't argue with that, can you? We've got 3 times digital zoom, so you can go in a little bit more. There you go. But these are pretty tiny little resistors here. So if I bring my ruler in here, which looks like an absolute giant, that's a component that's less than 1 mil in length. That's on the 3 times digital zoom. There is a little bit of noise when you go on full zoom. But if you take that out, that becomes a really clean image. So this is looking at the Dell motherboard with lens L, which does get you closer in, but you haven't got such a wider field of vision, as you can see. And that's with the microscope at its full height. All right, so that's a pretty clear view. So you can go as near as 90 mil. So that's pretty much on its limit. That's 90 mil away from the board. So if you want to look close in, then this lens L seems to be excellent. But I think for me, I'd probably want a wider view of the board. So I'm going to go back to the other lens and have another look. So without moving the microscope or the motherboard, I'm going to swap from lens L to lens A so you can see the difference to the field of vision. Okay, so let's bring that back in. Okay, so that is with lens A. So you can see the massive difference in the field of vision. You can see a lot more of the CPU socket. I realize that lens A, of course, is not as long as lens L. So by default, you're slightly further away from the board. But even so, if I bring that down to where we were, yeah, you've still got quite a nice wide field of view. So it depends on how close up you want to be looking at your board. So if you were using it for micro soldering on surface mount boards, you'd probably want to be using lens L because you can get much closer in. But then if you want a general wider view for looking at your board, that's still pretty close in. You can still zoom in with your 3 times digital zoom. There's a tiny little bit of noise when you zoom right in, but it's hardly noticeable. Right, so I've got it hooked up to our large 42-inch TV here. Let's take a look at that CPU socket, shall we? Fantastic. It looks huge on a 42-inch screen, doesn't it? You've got your zoom. You can zoom in if you're intending to do some repairs on your motherboards. You can do that. Again, when you zoom right in, there is that little bit of noise. So you've got a nice, lovely, clear image on there. And of course, you can capture video and photos on here as you've seen and transfer them to your PC, which is really easy to do. We'll do that in a sec. Right, let's have a look at some really tiny components then on this little Kindle tablet board. Get that in focus nice and sharp. You can see these components, these are tiny little components, which as we saw earlier, these are less than 1 millimeter in length. They're certainly a lot more than 1 millimeter up on the big screen there. So if you were working on something, you wanted to do some really fine micro soldering on some surface mount components, you can certainly see what you're doing on here, but you can really see what you're doing up on the big screen. So you've got to get your gooseneck lights positioned just right and you get a really great image. There's no LEDs on the ring of the microscope on this model, but the gooseneck lights are fine once you get them positioned just right. You've got to get them sat just right, and it's a bit trial and error, but you soon learn the best possible position so you don't get too much glare. You can see these resistors in all their glory there. You can see all the little bits of dust and things on them that have been on that board over the years. But that's certainly a really good, clear image, even on this screen here. But on the big screen, obviously, you're super magnified and you can easily pick up part numbers. You could check out each individual solder joint, which is really, really handy. This microscope might not have quite as many features as some of the more expensive ones we've looked at, but you're still going to get a really good image quality, both on the microscope screen and on the big screen itself. So this is running at 1080p on the TV screen, and this is a 42-inch TV, this one. So you can get right down in between these much taller capacitors and focus in on components much further down. That's fantastic. And of course you can take still images and video on the microscope and play them back on the PC. So let's get the telly out of the way, grab a laptop, and we'll hook it up and see how easy it is to get the images off the microscope. Right, the other thing to do before we go into PC mode is we're going to take this cable out here, which is the USB-C that normally powers the microscope, and we're going to replace it with this cable that comes with it, and we'll plug this one in, which is USB-C to USB-A. This end goes to the PC, and then the microscope will be powered by the PC while we're in PC mode. There we go. Of course, your gooseneck lights will continue to be powered by the barrel jack in the back of the stand there. So switch on the microscope and you get two options, mass storage or PC camera. So first of all, let's have a look at mass storage mode. And this opens on your PC as a USB drive. You can see it's drive G here on mine. So you open the USB drive, you've got a folder called DCIM, so let's click on that, and you've got movies and photos. Click on photos and you can see all the images that we've captured on the microscope. A few large icons, we can see what we're looking at, and there's all the images that I captured on the microscope while we were looking at it earlier. Double click on that. You can open that up and you can see full screen. We've got an image size there of 4032 by 3024. So you can see you've got nice clear images there, and you can just scroll through all the images that you've got on your SD card. So now let's come out of there and go back to movies, and you can see you've got your movie files there, which are MP4 files. There we go. Those are all MP4s. So let's just click on one of those and we can play it. There we go, and that's the Dell motherboard we were looking at earlier. And you can see it's nice quality video, records in 1080p. You can fiddle with the settings as well. And you can see there that's a resolution of 1920 by 1080 at 60 frames per second. Okay, so we've looked at mass storage mode. Now let's try PC camera mode. So this is where you can see the live images. So you just use the default camera app on your PC. So we'll just click on that and it opens your camera window, and you can see rather handily we've got the image on the microscope and on the PC in this case. So you've got a nice clear image on the microscope and you've got your image on the PC. So of course you can take a screenshot with your camera app. There you go, screenshot. Or of course you can record the video as well. So this is pretty handy if you want to make a video so you can remember what you've done in a repair, or you've found something on a board, or you want to remember part numbers. And of course you've got the video clip saved straight to your computer. It's right there. So you can either have the image on the microscope and the PC, or the image on the microscope and the HDMI, but it won't do all three at once, which is fair enough, but you get to choose depending on what you're doing. I did do a little bit of experimentation with this to see if it would run all three, but when you're in PC mode, as you can see, if I plug in the HDMI, as soon as I plug the HDMI cable in, it cuts off the PC output, so you don't get the image on the PC, you get it on the HDMI instead. So it's one or the other, but not both, which is fair enough. Okay, so if I take the HDMI out and go to PC camera, yeah, straight in. Okay, so cool. So you can get the image on the microscope and the PC, or the image on the microscope and the HDMI, but not on all three, which is fair enough. I think it's really handy that you've got two ways of recording there. So you can record directly onto the SD card, or you can record using the camera app on your PC. Then again, you've got two ways of transferring them. You can either transfer them using the mass storage mode, or you can just take the SD card out and put it in a SD card reader and pop it in your PC. So all pretty handy ways then of getting images from your microscope to your PC. Well, there you go, the Andonstar AD246S. I reckon that's a nice little microscope. It's got a lot going for it. It's obviously not as feature rich as some of the ones we've looked at, but for the price, you do get a lot for your money. It's great that you can have the image on the microscope and your PC at the same time, or on the microscope and the HDMI. And of course, you've got the interchangeable lenses. How often you'll want to change those depends on the kind of work you're doing. If you're swapping a lot between close-up work and further away work, you might find yourself needing to swap lenses to get the focal distance, but you might find that an advantage. And of course, you've got the ability to record 1080p video and capture decent images that you can transfer to your PC, either by hooking it up or by transferring it on the SD card. So I think it's a great little microscope for the price. You're not going to get all the gadgets and gizmos that you would on a more expensive one, but the only limitations really I've found on it, slight little bit of noise when you're using the digital zoom when you go on full zoom, but it's hardly noticeable. I'm being quite nitpicky. Also, the swapping around lenses might not be for everybody, but of course it makes the microscope more versatile. So if you're using it for electronics, but you also want to use it for other things, you can do that. And as we've seen, you can change the lens depending on whether you want a close-up or a further away view of the board. So if you fancy picking yourself up one of these Andonstar AD246S, I'll put the link in the video description down below so you can check it out for yourself. And big thanks to Andonstar for sending over this microscope for me to review. Hope you've enjoyed taking a look at this microscope with me today. I'll be back soon with some more tech related videos, but in the meantime, take care and I'll see you on the next one.